Former state lawmaker says he's filed an ethics complaint against Republican governor candidate Ty Masterson. Former state senator Mark Steffen said he filed the complaint with the Kansas Public Disclosure Commission, saying there appears to be a serious and ongoing violation of Kansas campaign finance law. Masterson, who's the president of the Kansas Senate, is the director of Go Create, a Koch-funded creative workspace on the Wichita State campus. In a statement, Steffen writes in part and claims that the evidence suggests Mr. Masterson is campaigning full-time while continuing to draw a public salary from Wichita State University, arguing that it represents a misuse of public resources, an unfair advantage over other candidates, and a breach of public trust. In part of a statement to 12 News, Masterson's campaign calls the former senator's complaint not valid, saying there is a desperate 2 weeks before the election favor for a campaign that's out of arguments from a failed sour grapes politician looking for relevance.